Hi there! With a surface area of more than 17 million square kilometers, almost twice as large as its nearest rival, Canada, the second largest country by surface area on the planet is Russia. And with a population of 1.4 billion people, 50 million people more than its nearest rival, India, the country with the second largest population in the world is China. Now I know some of you geography buffs out there will be going, "No Chris, you're wrong, you're a nincompoop. Russia is the largest country in the world by surface area and China is the largest country in the world by population. You know nothing." Well, I beg to differ. Because with a population of 2.38 billion people, the largest country in the world is Facebook. And with a surface area that reaches most of the globe, with notable exceptions China, North Korea, and with intermittent exceptions Syria, Iran, Egypt and others, and with some conditions found in the UK and Germany and others, the country with the greatest footprint on the planet is also Facebook. What? What's that? Oh, alright. I hear some of you saying, "Chris, you're a nincompoop. Facebook is an internet company and not a country." Well, again, I choose to disagree. And let me illustrate this by way of an example, using something that I know a bit more of, music. We don't know how old music is, but we know that the oldest musical instrument that has ever been found is 40,000 years old. And it is reasonable to assume that people had been singing long before that, and then there might be instruments that are older than that. This is just the oldest one we've found, because 40,000 years ago is a very long time to find something. But let's, argument's sake, go with 40,000 years. For the first 39,000 years of the past 40,000 years, music was simply sound willfully generated by a human, either through using their voice or some primitive instrument, the lyre or a flute or whatever it may be. And then 1,000 years ago it changed, because in what is today known as Iraq, they suddenly changed it. They made the first automated sound machine. It was a musical box that was driven by water. A wonderful invention. And then musical boxes became ever the more complex until they reached wonderful heights in more recent times. 150 years ago, Edison made it even more difficult, because then he invented the phonograph, which is the father of all the records, the vinyls, those of us who still listen to vinyls. And then in about 100 years ago, it became more complex, because then magnetic tape was invented, and suddenly music was moved into the realm of the electromagnetic. And in my lifetime we saw the advent of CDs and MP3s and MP4s, and it's all become stuff that we don't even understand how it works. But what I'm trying to get at is that music changed in terms of the realm of its definition and also the conditions for its definition, because now most of the music that is heard in the world comes from a digital source. It's generated by zeros and ones. Most of us don't know how, me included, don't know how this works. And even the creation of music can sometimes be through random programs. A computer can create it. Most of the music that you hear on the top 10 of your country's hit list is not generated, most of the music is not generated by real instruments. It's generated by computers, which cannot be reproduced in the mechanical world or by people's voices. And it's not about being wrong or right, it's just the way it is. But so there's this new thing that can generate it, and it's not something you play, it's something you program. It has changed the definition for music, is what I'm getting at. I think I'm elaborating too much. Now, the same goes for countries. We have the traditional nation state. Before the arrival of white people, I must be careful now, before the arrival of white people in South Africa, there wasn't the country. It was a free movement of people in certain geographical areas with overlapping and conquering again. And so the nation state is a fairly new concept. Depending on where you are, the most ancient nation states go back about 5,000 years, 8,000 years. But the nation state has changed and has changed again, and there was the invention of democracy and different ways to rule a state. And in the same way, we have to, with an eye on the future, acknowledge that the internet is going to change this, and it's going to change the concept of citizenry, the concept of state control, the concept of infrastructure, all those things. Now let's use a few real-world examples to find those correlations between the nation-state and something like Facebook. Now, the nation state has a border. Facebook has a border. You're either in Facebook or you're not in Facebook. And there is a little passport. You go in there and you type in your keyword so they know who you are, and then you enter the country of Facebook. Nation states have rulers. Facebook has a ruler. It has its ruling style more closely resembles that of an autocrat than of a modern democracy. It's a fairly benevolent dictatorship, but it still is a dictatorship. It's a dictatorship that listens to what the people wants, but ultimately has the right to determine everything by his own decision. And the name of the Caesar, the Holy Roman Empire of Facebook, is of course Mark Zuckerberg. And then he has all the people that work under him, and to varying degrees they also execute power and influence decision making. But it is about the ruler. There is a ruler and there's not a ruler. Nation states have infrastructure. Facebook has a complete infrastructure and an innovative infrastructure that changes frequently. Nation states have laws. Facebook also has laws. Nation states have law enforcement. Facebook also has law enforcement. Much of it is done by algorithms where they pick up on certain keywords and then zone in on what might be a problem. But you have all the hallmarks of law enforcement in Facebook to make sure that the laws of Facebook are not broken. And then in all nation states there are ramifications for those people who break the law, and the same happens in Facebook. There are also consequences, and they range from lessening people's rights to complete imprisonment, and I'll get to that, but Facebook pretty much does the same thing. Nation states have economies. Facebook has an economy. In fact, last year Facebook's turnover was $55.8 billion US, which was bigger than more than 100 countries' GDP. So there are 100 countries, more than 100 countries in the world last year whose gross domestic product was smaller than the annual revenue of Facebook. So not only are they an economic contender, they are a considerable economic contender. They have an economy. What else is there? Oh, Intel. Most countries have Intel, and Facebook also has Intel. It knows more about its citizens, I think, than any government knows about their citizens without Facebook. Facebook really understands you very well because you volunteer all this information and your life and your program and your diary. No nation knew as much about its people as Facebook before the advent of Facebook as Facebook does now. Now there's an argument to be made for, yes, now the government can take that information from Facebook. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. That's besides the point. The fact is that Facebook has more intel on its citizenry than any government has ever been able to manage ever before Facebook. Governments have propaganda. Sorry to say, but Facebook also has propaganda, because Facebook can determine which narratives are pushed and the way people view it and what videos you get to see, and let's get this angle on that issue and that angle on that issue. It's something that exists and something that has been done. There have been some scandals in recent times to make that clear. The Cambridge Analytica is the one that comes to mind. So there's your country of Facebook. And when I live, now some people might say, yes, but you can choose whether you're a citizen of Facebook or not. Yes, you can, but you know what? You can choose whether you're a citizen of any country in the world, because you can emigrate, not everywhere, but most places. You can emigrate to them, and it can cost as little as $45,000 if you want to become a citizen of the Comoros Islands, and it can cost millions and millions if you want to become a citizen of Switzerland, because first you have to have 10 years of residency proved in Switzerland, and that costs a lot of money, and then maybe you'll be accepted as a citizen or not a citizen. So it can be bought. The fact that it can be bought for a greater or a lesser degree of money doesn't change it. And the fact that citizenship to Facebook is very cheap also doesn't change it. It still isn't for free, because you need a tablet or a phone or a computer, or if you don't have any of those things, to be able to pay the internet cafe where you go in and you log on to Facebook. Then you need a certain economic value. You need to put a certain amount of money in to enable your citizenship for Facebook. And it is voluntary, but then the citizenship of almost any country in the world is voluntary, almost. So there's that similarity. Now, if wherever I'm going to live in the world, what's really important for me is the issue of freedom. Personal liberty and freedom, I'm huge on that. I don't need anyone to govern me. Unfortunately, I live in a world where that's the way it is, but I really don't feel the need to be governed by anyone. I know perfectly well how to behave. I'm a person who works from love, I'm a curious person, and I believe in building and not in breaking, and etc. etc. So that's always a very important consideration for me. For example, that's why citizenship in China wouldn't really be a reasonable option for me, because in China there's not that much freedom. The World Press Index of Freedom ranks China 177th out of 180 countries. That's not a very good score. And why? Because in China only state-approved news can be broadcasted. And sometimes you're a journalist and you take a chance because there's something that happens that is breaking news. You have to get it out now. And then it's very dangerous, because if the state doesn't like it, you risk losing your journalistic license and you risk imprisonment in severe cases. So you have to make sure that you put the government in a good light when you do that, because who knows what the consequences might be, and if it's critical of the government, well, rather don't deal with it, or if you do, really just say that there is this criticism of the government, but it's not good because. So it's a very dangerous game. And it's the same with Facebook, because in Facebook, all news is state approved. The state of Facebook approves all news, because Facebook, when you put the video on, like this video, I hope that you can see this video, which means at least I got through that, will say, yes, it's up for review. And then it is reviewed and it's okayed, stamp of approval, and there it goes out. So it's exactly that same system. And then if it is found to be not a good vibe with the state, then they will withdraw it as and then say that it's in breach of the community standards. And then you lose your journalistic license, because for that moment, because Facebook is all about journalism, it's citizen journalism, and even if it's just like this silly little tabloid of what cappuccino you drank this morning in whatever restaurant, or what kind of flower you like, or something amazing that you did, it's getting news out, news about yourself, and then more than just yourself. So you lose your journalistic license if that is taken away. And if you're in breach of the community standards of Facebook enough times, then you can be deplatformed, you can be banned from Facebook. And that is equal to imprisonment in real life, because what you do when you imprison someone, you remove them from society. There's nothing going in, there's nothing going out. You have to remove them so that they can rehabilitate, and sometimes it's for life. And you get that with Facebook, that some people have been banned for life from Facebook. So in the country of Facebook, they have been indefinitely incarcerated. So it boils down to the same thing. Now, all of these things that I've just mentioned really are background. And this is the real issue. This is why I'm saying what I'm saying. A few days ago, I shared a video that I saw of a lady, Daniela Deisel, who had a very interesting take on feminism. She herself is a feminist, but she feels that feminists sometimes undermine the feminist cause by alienating potential allies. And I thought, well, that's a good angle, and I liked it. Was presented well, it was well thought through, it was well worded, and she's soft on the eye. And I thought, well, okay, that's magnificent. I'll share it. But then I don't like just sharing things. I always want to put my own little thing in there as well. So I put, to attract attention to it, I said hashtag men are trash, because this is a thing that happens a lot on Twitter. It's a hashtag you see a lot. You see it on the streets in Cape Town. Men are trash. And it was up for 24 hours, so it was state approved, but then the state of Facebook had a second thought about that, and then they removed it. And then I got a message that I was in breach of their code of conduct, their community standards, especially relating to hate speech. Hate speech? That's not my vibe. I don't want that. Because I'm all for discussion and I'm all about love, and there's some issues I feel really strongly about, but hate speech, no. I don't say it to hurt you, and I don't hate anybody. I love people. So obviously I was like, oh, hate speech, well, how does this happen? And then I went to look if the video was still on her page, and it was. So I was like, okay, that's good. So it's not the video. And thank goodness for that, because I found nothing inflammatory and nothing hateful in that video. And then I thought, that's great. The hate speech was obviously men are trash, and that is a good thing. It's not a good thing. Let me just make it clear at this stage. I'm not a fan of censorship. No censorship whatsoever. I don't believe in any censorship, and even the most horrible stuff, no. If it's criminal, well, you show it, then you have to get those people. But censorship itself, I'm not in agreement, because you never take something away by hiding it. You just hide it, but it still exists and it festers under the carpet. I believe that parents can control what their children watch, but that's not censorship. That's parenting, which is a very nice thing. It's a good thing. You should do more of it. So I thought, well, if you're going to have censorship, then surely you should be consistent, and that's why it's maybe good that you say men are trash, because imagine I said women are trash, black people are trash, people with disabilities are trash, children are trash, immigrants are trash, especially in this current climate in South Africa. So none of those things are acceptable. So obviously, by the same yardstick and in the name of consistency, you can't possibly say men are trash. So I was like, that must be the hate speech. And I was relieved, and I was like, okay, well, I don't agree with censorship, but if you're going to have censorship, you should be consistent, so thank you. But I still wanted the video to go out, and I wanted to share the video from my site. So I shared it again, and this time I said, men are not trash. Because if men are trash is hate speech, then men are not trash must be love speech. And I love love speech. Well, it was on for an hour and then was taken off, again with the same message. It was in breach of the community standard, especially relating to hate speech. And I was like, what? How does this work? And now I'm confused, I'm perplexed. How does this work? I cannot understand it, and I still don't have clarity. They give you an option, they give you a questionnaire to fill in, and the second time around I requested it to be reviewed because I want to understand. I'm a guy who likes to know. I'm inquisitive like that. I'm the guy who keeps, if you work at a bank, thank me, because I'm the guy who still goes into the bank because I want to look you in the eye so that we can talk this through, because I always believe there's that human touch. Circumstances alter cases, like my mother always used to say, and still says. And so, and then I thought, well, until I wait for this, because now both videos have been removed, but it's still on the original site, thank goodness for that. But how does this work? Now, I don't like listening to music because I'm a musician, just like the plumber doesn't want to come home and lie under the basin and look at the piping, or the mechanic comes home and lies under the car and go like, oh, a V8, lovely. It's like, no, you get home, you want to get away from that. So my house is invariably a place of quiet, but I do listen to music, but then I make a thing of it. I'm specifically going to listen to music and take it in. And I listen to classical and rock and opera and pop and hip-hop and jazz. Well, not so much jazz, but sometimes jazz and even airy-fairy new age stuff, whatever. World music, blah, blah. And there's a hip-hop artist that I've been checking out for some time. It's a guy called 6ix9ine. He's a bad boy. He's a bad boy. I've never shared his stuff because I believe if you get such a gift, if you have this talent and you have this gift, you should make the world a nicer, more loving, more beautiful place. And that's why I don't share it, because I don't want too many other people to like it, but I myself can appreciate it for its skill. That's what it's about for me. It's skill in that particular genre. But the guy's in trouble. He's just been in prison. I think they've just let him out, and he's up for 47 years in prison. But if he snitches on the right guys, because he's into the gangster rap and he knows the gangsters, and that's not a good option for him, because if he snitches, then okay, you're free, out into the open world, and you're going to be taken out. I mean, we all know what happened to Tupac and Biggie Smalls, that it started the whole thing. So the rap culture is an aggressive culture. They're not always, but there are movements in it that makes it an incredibly dangerous place to be. But then this guy himself, women are objects to these objectifying women. Women completely are objects to them, and he has very visceral, graphic descriptions of what he does to the women in ways that traditionally might not have been viewed as natural. And then guns, threatening people with violence, threatening specific individuals with violence, and making the gang culture big. What's the name? Glorifying the gang culture. And now he's up for sex with a minor and dealing with drugs and illegal weapons and violence. So he's in a spot of bother. But the problem for society is that this guy's art has made the top 10 of the Billboard 100 a couple of times, and he's worked with some of the most notable figures in the industry, so you can't ignore him. He's there. And even though what he does goes against not only the norms but against the law, and he's being held by the law for that, but he still has a platform to say these things. So I shared a video of his yesterday, and I I shared it with the thing, while in South Africa we're Jack Barrowing and Adriana Singh, meanwhile back in California, this is what happening. Of course, not California. It was a fluff from me. Because he's from Brooklyn. He's a guy of Mexican descent in Brooklyn, so it should probably be East Coast. But anyway, forget about that. It's just I shared it, and I shared the song Kuda, which is definitely not his harshest song. I specifically didn't want to choose his harshest song because then I thought, now you're going to get into a spot of bother again, you're going to confuse it, and you're not going to find out what you're trying to find out. Now, it's been more than 24 hours, and that video is still on there. But in the video, there are definite misogynistic references to women, objectifying women, talking about all the nasty sex stuff that is censored by many places who believe in censorship. Gun violence, gang violence, threatening people with violence, how he's going to take you out. All those messages, and a fair amount of hate speech. Hate speech against certain individuals, against certain gangs, against women. But it's still on there. It hasn't been removed. And now I really don't understand it. Men are trash is hate speech, but men are not trash is also hate speech. Or the video is hate speech in which there is no hate speech, and then something which there is a lot of hate speech in, there's a lot of sounds in this thing, isn't there? Is still on, and I know that in real life, justice is something that can be bought. The law is just the checkout counter for justice, because people with a lot of money, with a lot of influence, it's not the same rules. They don't get the same jail time for the same thing. Petty crimes sometimes get years. That poor guy gets into the prison system and he never gets out. And then there are other guys cruising around in limos and suits and everything, lots of money, and justice just doesn't treat them the same. You would be naive to think that justice is blind and that it's even-handed. It certainly isn't. So maybe that's another coincidence. Another correlation between the state of Facebook and the state of the modern geographical state. Anyway, a lot of things are about to change in the world. We're living in a very exciting time. I, for myself, I'm only trying to find answers. I just want to know how this works. I've sent it up for review with Facebook. The fact that you can see this is actually a very good sign, if you can, because it means that's been approved, and it means that unlike the president of China, the ruler of Facebook can handle some criticism. And it's not nasty criticism. I really just want answers, and I want more freedom, more transparency, and more consistency. Thanks for listening.